All right, this morning, Pfizer is asking the FDA to make every adult eligible for its COVID booster shot.
Right now, only some groups can get the Pfizer booster 6 months after their second dose. That includes older Americans and all adults who have underlying conditions or work in high-risk settings. The FDA could grant this request possibly before Thanksgiving and well ahead of holiday travel and gatherings, a time when experts are worried cases could rise. That would open the door to millions more Americans getting a third dose. Well, Pfizer tries to expand its booster rollout. A small dose of the company's vaccine is already going into the arms of children. CDC says more than 432,000 kids between the ages of 5 and 11 have received their first dose. The CDC authorized the kids shot last week. NBC News correspondent Heidi Przybyla is at an elementary school in Maryland with the latest on the kids' vaccine rollout. Dr. Bob Lahita is joining us to answer some of our more pressing questions about the pandemic, including boosters. Let's start with Heidi. So that elementary school where you're at has been turned into a pop-up vaccination site. How's it going there so far? What are you hearing from parents?
Yeah, Joe, we were here for a couple of hours yesterday, and business is pretty brisk. This is what we're expecting according to the data, that just like with adults, there's about a third of the population that's really eager to get out there and get those shots. So the county executive told us that she's expecting this to be the case for a couple of weeks at least, and that parents feel very comfortable coming to this type of a setting that is familiar to them in the schools. As far as the parents themselves, well, they told us they're just relieved. It's really amazing, Joe, to talk to some of these parents and realize some of the disruption that's still going on in their lives. Parents who are still homeschooling, afraid to take their kids to the elementary schools, as well as all of those emails we keep getting about constant exposures. Here it is from a couple of moms.
It won't be super back to normal, but I think you'll feel a lot more safer with the other students and just the building overall. Because you would think a whole building with just adults vaccinated is a little scary. So I think you'll put everybody at ease, and they can kind of start to be more social.
Now that they are vaccinated, I feel a little better with them being vaccinated, so that if they were to catch it, the vaccine will help fight it for them. I won't be scared as much.
So, guys, it was really cute to see how this looks a little different with the younger ones. Some of them were coming in there with their emotional support stuffies. Some of them brought grandma, and the lengths to which the clinics are going to try and make them comfortable, including candy, entertainment, and my personal favorite, a separate escape door for the screamers, so they don't scare the new ones coming in.
That is a smart idea right there. All right. Now, we know it's not just the kids. Not all parents are on board yet. A recent Kaiser survey found 30% of parents say they will definitely not get their kids vaccinated. Now, I know you spoke exclusively with the deputy director of the White House COVID response team. How do they plan on reaching nearly a third of parents who are saying, no, absolutely not right now?
You know, and I also want to point out, Joe, that's double the number of adults who initially said definitely not, which was only about 15%. So, yes, we did have an exclusive interview with the deputy COVID response director, who told us they're doing everything they can in terms of trying to assure parents, but also changing the infrastructure around all of this, basing a lot of this at very familiar places like schools, like children's hospitals. They have these partnerships with pediatricians, children's hospitals. Parents are going to want to get it directly from healthcare providers. Here's a little bit of what she told us.
We are doing everything we can to arm parents with the information, and importantly, to arm trusted messengers, the pharmacists, the pediatricians, the family doctors. We know that this is the single best way to protect our kids from 5 to 11 is to get them vaccinated. And while kids may not suffer as severe illness as older Americans, kids still make up 1 in 4 cases in this country, and that's certainly too high.
So, guys, a lot of these parents who are saying definitely not tend to be younger parents. They have younger kids who may not be vaccinated themselves. That's why we need this concerted outreach effort. And a lot of these decisions as well about setting up these clinics are very, very localized, just because this issue of vaccinating younger children has become so politicized.
All right. Heidi, thanks so much for kicking us off.
Dr. Bob Lahita joins us now. He's a professor at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine and the director of the Institute for Autoimmune and Rheumatic Diseases at St. Joseph Health. Good morning, Dr. Lahita. Always great to see you. So let's talk a little bit more about that survey that Joe just referenced, this recent Kaiser survey. It also said only 27% of parents say they plan to get their 5 to 11-year-old vaccinated right away. And one of the reasons we hear about this hesitation is because parents are wondering, do kids really need this? So can you tell us, what does the risk for COVID look like for kids as young as 5 right now?
Well, there is a risk, Savannah. First of all, children can be infected and they can get very, very sick. It is unusual for that to happen. They can also spread the virus, and they can have the short and the long-term effects that we see in adults as well. And at the worst thing that can happen is multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which we are seeing in the hospital. Admittedly very rare, but when your child gets MIS-C, that is what that stands for. They can get very sick and wind up in the intensive care unit. So it's really important for parents to understand that this is not a frivolous thing and that it's a very, very safe thing to do, to get your child vaccinated.
And now, Doctor, the other news about Pfizer is that they want to make booster doses available for all adults, as we mentioned at the top of the show. What do you make of that request from Pfizer? Is it time for everyone, even if you're not at risk, even if you're in that younger age group, to get a booster?
Yeah, I think everyone should get a booster. People over 65 and those with comorbidities like heart disease and severe lung disease should get the booster. And pregnant women and people who are obese particularly should get the booster because they are at risk. And they're at risk for significant disease. And 14% of the population have already gotten the booster shot. And, you know, you can mix and match. You don't have to get, if you got the J&J, you can get the Moderna or the Pfizer-BioNTech booster shot. You don't have to stick with what you got previously.
And so now, Dr. Lahita, if the FDA and the CDC do sign off on Pfizer boosters for all adults, let's say before the holidays, what kind of impact do you think that will have on cases? I mean, could something like that prevent a winter surge?
Yeah, Savannah, we've always been concerned about the winter surge, particularly, you know, Thanksgiving is next week. Everybody gets together with their family members, some vaccinated, some not vaccinated. And this is a potential for a spike. And we're seeing it in other countries, but we don't want to see the Delta variant going bananas here during Thanksgiving and later during Christmas.
Absolutely. Dr. Bob Lahita, as always, so great to have you. Thanks so much.
We're following two major developments this morning from the investigation into the January 6th insurrection. First, the House committee leading the inquiry issued more subpoenas yesterday to former Trump aides. That includes ex-press secretary Kayleigh McEnany, senior advisor Stephen Miller, plus 8 other former administration officials. On top of that, a federal judge denied former President Trump's bid to stop White House documents from being released and handed over to the investigating committee. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us now with more. So, Ali, let's start with those 2 high-profile subpoenas, Kayleigh McEnany and Stephen Miller. Why are they critical to the investigation, and what is the committee hoping to get here?
Look, Joe, all of this speaks to what was going on in the White House in the days and weeks before January 6th, which is the main focus point for the committee. We've seen them issue a whole range of subpoenas from the people who planned the rallies on January 6th, both at the Ellipse and over at the Capitol. And we've also seen them go for the president's inner circle physically inside the White House in those critical days. Chief among those people are people like Kayleigh McEnany and Stephen Miller. Specifically looking at Kayleigh McEnany's subpoena, you can see it on your screen. One of the things that they wrote, the January 6th committee, and why they want to talk to her is because they said that they've revealed credible evidence of her involvement in the events within the scope of the Select Committee's inquiry. Specifically to McEnany, we know she was the chief messaging person for the administration, as well as for the Trump campaign, someone who was critical in disseminating a lot of the mis and disinformation about what actually happened in the November election. That's something that the committee is very, very interested in.
And as we mentioned, another major development, a federal judge ruled against former President Trump's efforts to try and shield various documents from the committee. What more can you tell us about those documents, and when will the committee actually get to see them?
Well, we know that the Trump lawyers did not want the National Archives to be able to release the thousands of records that the Select Committee is trying to get at. All of those things range from the president's daily diary, the calls that he was making, the meetings that he was having, but also notes that were taken by hand by his senior staff, people like then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. There were also speech drafts by people like Kayleigh McEnany. All of this is important to the committee in understanding how paper was flowing, but also how conversations were going within the White House around January 6th. What the judge did last night is say that the Trump lawyers, no matter their protests, don't have a right to say that the National Archives cannot release those documents. Now, what we could see is those documents flow to the committee as soon as Friday. The Trump lawyers are going to try to stop that. They're going to try to continue to drag this out. But here's what Chairman Benny Thompson said in the aftermath of that decision late last night. Chairman Thompson said, "The Select Committee appreciates the court's swift and decisive ruling on the former president's lawsuit." Thompson says, in his view, there couldn't be a more compelling public interest than getting answers about an attack on our democracy.
And Allie, quickly on this last question, could you give us some insight into what comes next for this investigative committee?
We know that they've continued to do depositions. I actually caught up with Chairman Thompson just a few days ago on the Hill, and I asked him, are they doing those depositions physically on the Hill? In some cases, yes, they're doing them in remote locations around the Capitol complex. But in other cases, he told me that there have been staff from the committee flying around the country, places like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, talking with people, some people voluntarily coming forward to the committee. Others were seeing these subpoenas come at a much quicker clip. The thing that we always talk about here, Joe, when we talk about the January 6th committee's work, is how quickly they want to go. The Trump legal team is going to try to slow this down, both in regards to the National Archives documents that they're seeking, and also in terms of the subpoenas that are being issued to people in Trump's inner orbit. But at the same time, the committee's working ahead as quickly as they can.
All right, Allie Vitale, thank you so much.
With the holidays just around the corner, ongoing supply chain bottlenecks are threatening to derail many people's plans. With congestion at ports as one of the biggest holdups, the White House says the recently passed infrastructure plan will be key in relieving those backups. Today, President Biden is headed to the port of Baltimore as part of a week-long mission by his administration to show the legislation's real-world impact. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now. Hey, Mike, good morning. So how does the president say that this recently passed infrastructure plan is going to directly help with these supply chain problems that many of us are feeling?
What's so interesting about this, Savannah, is when the president first proposed his infrastructure plan, supply chain concerns were really not on the radar. So the fact that this long-awaited roadshow that begins today with a short trip to Baltimore is focused on it speaks to the real political peril the White House sees in this issue around the holidays. And what the president's going to be doing is laying out first some of the administrative steps his administration announced yesterday to free up some grant money to help ports do some infrastructure projects with existing monies. But the bigger issue is going to be $17 billion in this bipartisan plan that will go to ports, but not just for ports. There's a larger rail project that the Port of Baltimore specifically will benefit from. It will expand the capacity of the port more than double once they do a rail tunnel project that's been long delayed. Now that this money is finally on its way, almost, then this will really have a big impact. It's not one of the ports that's really the biggest bottlenecks out on the West Coast, but it's one that the president can spotlight some action early on as we get ready for a larger roadshow by the administration going forward.
Yeah, so tell us more about that roadshow. So the president and several secretaries are going to go on this roadshow to promote this, but he still hasn't signed it into law. So walk us through when this is happening, what's behind the delay of it being signed in, and what's this roadshow going to look like?
I think the question we ask probably more than any at the White House these days is, when is the bill signing? There was such an urgency to get it passed, but now there's a wait. Well, it's because the president wants to have a big celebration, and they're going to wait for Congress to come back into session to have lawmakers who were part of the really tough effort to get this over the finish line in the House, in the White House for it. But the larger issue here is that the president is also preparing for a real implementation challenge. This is trillions of dollars that the administration is getting ready to spend. And so we saw Gina Raimondo, the Commerce Secretary. She's one of those cabinet officials who's going to have a big role. She was in the briefing room yesterday talking about a cabinet meeting they're going to have on Friday with the president to lay out the next steps, but also the idea of shovel-worthy projects and shovel-ready projects. There are some monies that are going to go out quickly. There are others that are really just in the beginning phases that she says will take months to see the impact going out. But clearly the administration sees a real political incentive to get out and try to promote these benefits soon.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the second half of the president's economic agenda. So this infrastructure bill was just step one. Then we still have this $1.7 trillion climate and social spending package. I'm sure our viewers remember us talking so much about this. Well, it still hangs in the balance. Where does that bill stand?
Yeah, well, with Congress out of town this week, that's really been sort of on the back burner, as it were. But the big thing that we're waiting for before this can move forward is something called the score. The Congressional Budget Office really essentially says, how much will this cost? Will this raise the deficit? Will it actually provide a surplus? That we don't expect for at least another week. And some of those moderates who've been so key here are waiting until they see that. But the president last night, speaking to Democratic National Committee fundraiser, really laid out the urgency and the benefits that he sees coming. Let's take a listen to what he had to say last night.
The bottom line is legislation is going to change the lives of the American people. And they expect us to deliver when they elected us, and we did. And now we need to do it again with the Build Back Better initiative for struggling families with child care, elder care. And it's going to be life-changing.
What's interesting is the Congressional Budget Office score of the bipartisan plan found that it actually raised the deficit. So that's interesting when you hear moderates, even Joe Manchin, saying that they want to ensure that the larger reconciliation plan won't add to the deficit, considering what they've just passed already will.
Absolutely. All right, Mike Memoli in what I think I spy is a new Pink Wednesday tie, and I love it.
Just
Thank you so much. I love it. Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
All right, let's look forward and maybe a few days backward with your morning news now weather.
Yes, we're so happy to say that our Bill Cairns is back. He's been resting after running in the New York City Marathon. Let's look at him with his medal and a new personal record. He finished the race in 3 hours and 38 minutes. Okay, get this. It's a whopping 42 minutes faster than his time in 2019. Bill Cairns, how did you do that? Congratulations. We're so happy we missed you. This is so exciting.
Yeah, no, well, first off, it wasn't easy. Let's just put it that way. Getting in the car yesterday, it was still like this, like one leg, lifting the other leg. No, it's been, I never ran. About 5 years ago is when I started running. And on my first run ever, I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am right now. I went out for 2 miles and I died. On the way back from my run, a guy walking his golden retriever passed me and asked me if I was okay. So, you know, if there's any inspiration there, it's just that if you keep at it, if you try hard enough, you can get better at it. But it's a lot of work. So
Bill, I mean, hello, you're an Iron Man now. What a cool story. I love that. We're so happy for you. Congrats.
Yeah. It's a lot of time. I have a lot of friends that I haven't seen in a long time. So, I need a little more life balance. So, all right, let's get to this forecast and help you guys out here. We have a big coast-to-coast storm. I mean, everyone's been just talking about this unbelievably warm fall we've had. It continues today, the eastern half of the country, but it will come to a crashing halt. It has to eventually, right? I mean, the sun's like setting at 4:30 in the afternoon now. So the rain will be in the middle of the country along with some snow today. We could get some isolated severe weather between Oklahoma City and Dallas. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then on Thursday, tomorrow, we watch the storm system through the Ohio Valley in the southeast. A brief period of heavy rain Friday morning in the northeast, and then it gets cooler as we head towards the weekend. So concerns with this storm, we're not going to have a lot of damage, but we could see some isolated severe weather, maybe even an isolated tornado from Dallas all the way to Oklahoma City. We'll watch that this afternoon and this evening. And how about snow? It is that time of year we can get snowstorms. This will not be a huge one. The only areas that'll have a plowable snow will be Fargo to International Falls. And as we mentioned, it is lunch outdoors again, guys. 69 in D.C., 68 in New York City. So, yeah, enjoy this beautiful stuff. It will not last forever. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Weather's so nice, you might run another marathon in it, right? Do another one tomorrow?
Not till next November.
All right. Take a break. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.